And at the same time, detectives were also manually putting together a list of their top 100 suspects. That list included Bundy as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, because, there's been reports about him and he matches the descriptions pretty well. So,
I was about to say, once you get those 26 names, you just have to visually look at them and be like, which ones suit the description then.
Yeah. In his 2005 book, The Riverman, former King County Detective Robert Keppel stated that Bundy was literally at the top of the pile of suspects when word came from Utah that he had been arrested.
Oh, yeah. I remember him being arrested, but for what?
Well, on August 16th, 1975, so this was just under 2 months after his last confessed murder, Utah Highway Patrol Officer Bob Hayward arrested Bundy after observing him driving around the Salt Lake City suburb of Granger sometime before dawn. Bundy then fled the area at high speed, and when Hayward pulled him over and searched the car, he found that the front passenger seat had been removed and placed on the rear seats, and I think, I'm not sure whether it was in the trunk or on the back seat, but he found a ski mask, which Bundy claimed was for skiing, a second mask made from pantyhose, a crowbar, some handcuffs, which Bundy claimed he found in a dumpster, some trash bags, a coil of rope, an ice pick, and some other items that Hayward initially assumed to be burglary tools. Yeah. Other than the ski mask and the handcuffs, Bundy claimed that all the others were just common household items, which...
Yeah, like an ice pick.
Trash bags, coil of rope, ice pick. Yeah, nah, mate.
Just climb up the side of the house.
It's, sus. Ted's sus.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Just a touch.
Vote him out.
Yeah, but Detective Jerry Thompson remembered the description of the car and of the suspect from the Durant kidnapping attempt. Remember, that was when he posed as a cop and she escaped. And matched Bundy's name to one of Klipfer's phone calls. Yeah.
Wait, if the front passenger seat had been removed out of his car, how did he get people into his car?
I don't know. I think that may have been something that he did, like
later on,
between the murders and being arrested.
Because again, that'd be super sus if someone's like, "Oh yeah, you have to come with me," and you're like, "Where's your seat?"
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's possible that he did it to make room for a body. I don't know.
Yeah,
it didn't come up. Didn't come up in my research. Sorry. But yeah, they searched his apartment and found, amongst other things, a guide to the Colorado ski resorts. Remember, Julie Cunningham was a ski instructor.
Yeah.
And this guide had a check mark next to the Wildwood Inn, which, if you remember, was where Karen Campbell disappeared. They also found a brochure for a Viewmont High School play in Bountiful. If you remember, that was where Deborah Kent disappeared.
Yeah.
And she was at the high school on the night of the play to pick up her younger brother.
Right.
So, yeah, that's where she disappeared from. Despite this, no, they didn't have sufficient evidence to detain Bundy, who at this point was in police custody at the police station, right?
Yeah.
But not enough evidence to keep him there. So
the top suspect, at least by that point.
oh yeah, but they didn't have the evidence legally. They didn't have the evidence to detain him, so they released him. And later on, he said that they missed a hidden collection of Polaroid photos of the victims, which he destroyed after being released.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Great.
Yeah, they just didn't search well enough.
Oh my god.
That's actually nuts.
Yep. So after this, Detective Thompson and two other detectives flew to Seattle to interview Klipfer, while Bundy was put under 24-hour surveillance. Klipfer had, during this time period, she'd found objects in her house and his apartment that she, quote, couldn't understand. This was stuff like some crutches, a meat cleaver that Bundy never used for cooking, some surgical gloves, a bag of plaster of Paris, and a sack of women's clothing.
Ah,
Yeah. A little bit of a red flag, you'd think.
She's like, nah, he's just cheating
Just
on
a
me.
bit.
Yeah,
Oh, that's not great.
Bundy was also apparently not great with money because he was like perpetually in debt.
He was going to how many unis?
Yeah,
That
well,
was gonna be my question before. Like, how did he pay for all of this, especially like in the
Yeah.
70s?
yeah, well, Klipfer had suspicions that pretty much everything of value that he owned was stolen.
Yeah.
Which I think he later confessed to. But yeah, she once confronted him over having a new stereo and TV. And he said to her, "If you tell anyone, I'll break your fucking neck."
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she also said that he became very upset whenever she considered cutting her hair, which she kept long and parted in the middle.
Oh god.
See, that's one that I
Oh.
remember as well. But like, why didn't he kill them?
I don't know. I guess because I think the victims, the murders came after he met her. I think. Hold on. Let me go back here a second.
Like, yeah, I remember in the movie, like, she asks him, "Did you ever think about killing me?" And I think he said, like, I don't know if he either said no or he said like the complete opposite, which was like all the time.
I don't know, but no, he met her at uni, at college before the murders, like years before, like 5 years before the murders. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe the murders had something to do with her. Like he had a obsession with the way she looked or something. I don't know. Again, psychological issues. He's a serial killer. He's a maniac.
Can't tell what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. He would just do weird stuff. Like he kept a lug wrench in the trunk of her car. Again, a Volkswagen Beetle, like I said.
What is a lug wrench?
It's like
It's like the one where it's crooked at the top and then it's...
yeah, it's kind of like a tire iron.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
you use
yeah,
it for
yeah,
changing
yeah,
a tire. Yeah. Ostensibly for protection, he claimed. And he would often borrow her car. So there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ah.
Don't know what was
Yeah,
going on
especially
there.
when they were like, "Oh, it's a Volkswagen Beetle," he's like, "Babe, I need the car."
Yeah. Well, they both had Volkswagen Beetles. Only his was brown. I don't know what color hers was, but
Probably
maybe it
not
was just to
brown.
throw them off. I don't know. Yeah. The detectives. And give me a moment to get my mouth in working order.
See, I do that too. Whenever I mess up my words, I just start making noises because it
Mm.
gives my brain a second to catch up.
I just swear usually.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I mean, that's one way to deal with it. Yeah, so the detectives in interviewing Klipfer basically confirmed that Bundy wasn't with her on any of the nights that any of the victims had disappeared, nor on the day of the beach abductions when he took Ott and Nasland. Ott and Nasland, those are their names. I will get them correct. Klipfer was interviewed shortly afterward by Kathy McChesney, who was a homicide detective in Seattle, and that was where she learned about Stephanie Brooks, the girl that Bundy dated in college, who broke up with him. Yeah, apparently they were briefly engaged around 1973,
Oh.
which would have been shortly before he met Klipfer.
Right.
What happened to the other girlfriend? The first. Wait, Klipfer was the first one that he had, and then he got a second one, right?
No, Stephanie Brooks was the girl he was dating in college, who then
Yeah.
broke up with him.
Yeah.
And then he met Klipfer later on at college.
Yeah.
And then he met Carol Boone when he was working at the Department of Emergency
Yeah. What
Services.
happened to her? Because she kind of just disappears.
She's still around. Yeah, they're still in contact. He's still in contact with all these women,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
except for Brooks, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they parted ways a while back. Yeah, so in September of this year, not 2020,
Yeah.
the whatever year we're on, I'm
Yeah.
losing track.
Some year,
Was it
1970
78?
75?
78, I think.
70s, late
Yeah,
70s.
yeah. So in September, Bundy sold his Volkswagen to a teenager in Midvale. It was impounded by the police, and FBI technicians searched it and found hairs that matched samples obtained from Karen Campbell's body. They also identified hair strands microscopically indistinguishable from those of Melissa Smith and Carol Duranch. Yep. Robert Neal, an FBI lab specialist, he concluded that the presence of hair strands in one car matching 3 different victims who had never met one another would be a coincidence of mind-boggling rarity. His words.
Tell me that was the straw that broke Campbell's back. Please tell me that's what got him.
Well, on October 2nd, detectives put Bundy into a lineup where Carol Duranch immediately identified him as Officer Roseland, who had attempted to abduct her, and witnesses from Bountiful recognised him as the stranger at the high school auditorium.
Finally!
Yep.
It's like finding hair strands to bring him down.
Yep. So by this point, they have more than enough evidence to charge him with aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault in the Duranch case.
But murder? Psh, nah.
Well, he was freed on a $15,000 bail, which was paid by his parents. I'm assuming they mean Louise and Johnny. And most of that time when he was out on bail, he was in Seattle living in Clifford's house. So she took him back.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait. So they surely would have called his parents and been like, hey, I've been arrested on these counts, can you bail me out?
Yeah, probably.
If I called my parents with something like that, they'd be like, no, you are no longer our child.
Pretty
like,
much, yeah.
disowned, no, rot in jail for
Yeah.
all I care.
I doubt-
And a 15,000 bail. And that's
I-
all
yeah,
you
And they
do.
were just like,
$15,000 in the 70s.
yeah, was a lot.
That is true,
Yeah.
but still, like...
Oh, it just makes it worse. Yeah. So yeah, his parents paid his bail. He's living in Clifford's house in Seattle. Police in Seattle didn't have enough evidence to charge him with the Pacific Northwest murders, but they were keeping him under surveillance. And in November, the 3 investigators who were like taking lead on the case. This was Jerry Thompson from Utah, Robert Keppel from Washington, and a guy who we haven't mentioned yet, Michael Fisher from Colorado. They met at a summit in Aspen, Colorado, which would later be known as the Aspen Summit. And they met. Yeah, the summit brought together another 30 detectives and prosecutors from 5 different states. And they basically agreed that, yeah, this guy's the murderer we're looking for.
It's him.
Yeah.
Finally.
But they also agreed that they didn't have enough evidence to charge him with any of the murders, and that they needed to gather more. These guys are experts. Like, they know it's him, they just don't have the evidence. So
Right.
that's what they're gonna go do.
So pretty much trying to just bait him out and get him straight. That's pretty
I
much-
think they're just gonna keep trying, really. But in
He could
fact,
have done so much. Like, even though he was under surveillance, he still could have done a lot of shit. Like,
probably.
while he was out.
Well, Clipford would later say that... Where's this quote? Here it is. When Ted and I stepped out on the porch to go somewhere, so many unmarked police cars started up that it sounded like the beginning of the Indy 500. So, there were a lot of cops on the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so in February 1976...
I don't get how you could stay with someone like that.
Also, did the police not get a search warrant for the house?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
What about the women's clothes, you know?
Well,
She was
that's the
just like,
thing.
That's strange.
That's the thing. When
How is
it would...
that not
Well,
enough evidence?
when they went to... When the detectives flew up from Salt Lake City to interview Elizabeth Clipford, they would have searched the house as well, and that's when they found all that stuff.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
And
so
they didn't DNA test the clothing?
probably, but I'm guessing they just didn't find anything concrete. You know, they didn't.
Strands of hair, clothing, weird tools in his vehicle. No alibis to speak of, I'm assuming.
Women identifying him in the kidnapping.
Yeah,
But they're
yeah.
like,
Well,
"No,
that's
soz."
that's the thing, is that in February 1976 he did stand trial for the Duranch kidnapping. Like they've got him on that.
Happened.
And this is one of the cases where you were saying he acted as his own attorney.
Yeah.
He had no, wait, no, it wasn't. No, this was the one where he he had the right to a jury, but he said, no, I don't want. I want a bench trial. I want the judge to decide.
Yeah.
And the trial took 4 days and a weekend of deliberation. After which Judge Stuart Hanson Jr. found him guilty of kidnapping and assault. And in June, he was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison. In October, he was found hiding in the bushes in the prison yard carrying an escape kit, which consisted of some road maps, airline schedules, and a social security card. Don't know how he got that. He's in prison.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
He was put in solitary confinement for a few weeks for that. And later that month, he was charged with Karen Campbell's murder by Colorado authorities.
Right.
Wasn't there one case where he like escaped from?
We'll get to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So he was transferred to Aspen in January 1977 after being charged with Campbell's murder.
Which one was Campbell? I'm so lost. There's so many murders.
Yeah.
Karen Campbell was, I believe, the registered nurse who...
Right.
Yeah, registered nurse. She disappeared from the Wildwood Inn.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there definitely was enough evidence with that, with like the markings on the.
Yeah, I would say so.
map and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if they've...
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, so they've charged him with the murder, and he's been transferred to Aspen, Colorado, to stand trial. So this was where he represented himself. And because of this, whilst he was at the courthouse for a preliminary hearing, because he was acting as his own attorney, he wasn't required to wear handcuffs or leg shackles. The judge excused him from having to wear those. During a recess, so while the court was adjourned briefly, he asked to visit the law library at the courthouse to do some research. And while behind a bookcase, where the guards couldn't see him, he opened a window and jumped to the ground from the second story. Yep. Injured his right ankle as he landed.
To be fair, like a second story is high, but if you're hanging from like the window frame, it's very easy to not like hurt yourself severely from jumping from a second story window.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it'll hurt, but like, it's pretty easy. They should have, because I think they had like guards, but outside the room.
Probably. I think he sprained his ankle. Yeah,
Yeah.
He sprained his ankle.
I think
Yeah.
they had like guards outside the room so that he couldn't, run out of the room and run out. But they just didn't think about the windows because they were like, who's going to jump out of a second story window?
Yeah, basically. And not long after, they realised, oh shit, he's gone. Alerted the authorities, and they started setting up roadblocks. But he just got rid of his jacket, or whatever, and just walked right on past,
Really?
out of Aspen.
Yeah.
Yep. He hiked south onto Aspen Mountain, broke into a hunting cabin, stole some food, clothing, and a rifle. Wandered about in the woods for about 6 days, I think.
Really?
Yeah, 6 days. Ended up stealing a car. At this point, he's freezing, sleep deprived. Takes his car, drives his car back into Aspen. A couple of cops notice he's driving erratically, pull him over, and they find in the car that he has maps of the area around Aspen.
Why would you go back to Aspen? Is my thing like?
No, I think he was just like, ugh, this isn't working. I need to go back and figure out what I'm going to do next. Yeah. So he had the maps because, as his own attorney, Bundy had right of discovery, which means he had access to all the evidence that they had on him. And all that.
Right.
So yeah, that's how he got the maps, and basically it means he was planning to escape, like he was prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's back in police custody, and the case against him is not going amazingly. Well, again, they don't have a huge amount of evidence on him, like specifically for the murders.
Yeah.
Like the kidnapping, obviously he's been charged with, but the murders they can't confirm anything. And all of his legal advisors, telling him just stick it out, they don't have enough on you. You'll get through this.
Imagine
You'll
being an attorney for a murder, like you know it's him, but like you have to win a case, so you're just like,
yeah, and it happens. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not uncommon.
yeah,
but yeah. So at this point, he's only got the 1 to 15 years for the kidnapping charge.
yeah,
Right. So he could be out in as little as 1 year, depending on his behaviour.
yeah.
But yeah, there's evidence being ruled inadmissible. Yeah, it's just not looking good. And again, there's just not enough evidence.
Yeah.
But whilst detained in Aspen, awaiting trial, he attempted another escape. He acquired a floor plan of the jail, as well as a hacksaw blade that he got from another inmate, and $500 in cash, which he reckons visitors smuggled in over a 6-month period. Mostly it was Carol Boone bringing in the money. But yeah, in the evenings, during shower time, he would work on cutting a hole in his cell ceiling. It's only about 1 square foot, so about big, about 30 centimeters on each side.
Yeah.
It's about 12 inches a foot. And he had at this point lost about 16 kilos while in prison. So he's skinnying down, and he made some practice runs in the crawl space, getting through the hole and moving around in the ceiling. An informant who was in the jail did report noises of movement in the ceiling during the night, but those reports weren't followed up on.
Why would they be?
He's already tried to escape once. Like,
yeah.
oh my gosh.
And he mounted his great escape on the night of December 30th. So most of the jail staff were on Christmas break, and a lot of the non-violent prisoners had been put on furlough to go be with their families.
Yeah.
So like they, let out of the prison for a limited period of time, and then they have to come back and continue with whatever trial proceedings going on there. So prison was relatively empty. He piled a bunch of books and binder files in his bed to make it look like he was still there. That classic trick when you need to sneak out. Covered them with a blanket and climbed into the crawl space. He broke through the ceiling into the apartment of the chief jailer, who was out for the evening with his wife. He took street clothing from the chief jailer's closet, changed into it, and just walked out the front door.
Nobody was like, why is there
Nope.
Also, the office above his cell
just
oh my
happened
Yeah.
to be...
Did he know, like, that it was there?
Yeah, because he'd acquired floor plans.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
But why... They just happened to put his cell under... Wow.
Yeah, I guess it was just the way that the jail was constructed.
But that's what I'm saying. How did nobody be like, why is there a civilian in the prison?
Well, it was the chief jailer's clothes, and there was minimal staff on site that night. So I'm guessing the guard wasn't paying attention. And he just figured it was the chief jailer going out. Never mind that the chief jailer had already left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, he stole a car, drove, hitchhiked, caught a bus to Denver, and then caught a plane to Chicago. And the jail skeleton crew didn't discover that he'd escaped until noon on December 31st, the next day, more than 17 hours later.
Jesus.
And Bundy was already in Chicago by then.
I was about to say, you could be in a completely different country by then.
Yep. And from Chicago, he caught a train to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I said that weird. He then stole a car and drove to Atlanta, Georgia. And then caught a bus to Tallahassee, Florida. And Florida, this is where it gets nasty. As if it hadn't already.
It's nasty.
Yeah. So he rented a room at a Holiday Inn near the Florida State University campus. And Bundy reckons that he said this in later interviews that he was going to try, go on the straight and narrow, not murder anyone, not steal anything, just be, legit. Didn't really work. He applied for one job at a construction site, and during the hiring process, they asked him to produce identification, which, obviously he couldn't, because it would identify him as a convicted criminal.
Yes.
So he went to shoplifting and stealing credit cards from women's wallets.
Huh.
Yeah. And this next bit is... it's a bit heavy. I don't know why he did it. I'm assuming it was just getting out some frustration, but this is pretty brutal. And I'm just going to read these next few paragraphs just verbatim, because it's just so dense and there's a lot to get through. So, if you're ready. In the early hours of January 15th, 1978, 1 week after his arrival in Tallahassee, Bundy entered Florida State University's Chi Omega sorority house through a rear door with a faulty locking mechanism. Beginning at about 2:45 a.m., he bludgeoned Margaret Bowman, 21, with a piece of oak firewood as she slept, then garroted her with a nylon stocking. He then entered the bedroom of 20-year-old Lisa Levy and beat her unconscious, strangled her, tore one of her nipples, bit deeply into her left buttock, and sexually assaulted her with a hair mist bottle. In an adjoining bedroom, he attacked Kathy Kleiner, breaking her jaw and deeply lacerating her shoulder, and Karen Chandler, who suffered a concussion, broken jaw, loss of teeth, and a crushed finger. Chandler and Kleiner survived the attack. Kleiner later attributed their survival to automobile headlights illuminating the interior of their room and frightening away the attacker. Tallahassee detectives later determined that the 4 attacks took place in a total of less than 15 minutes, within earshot of more than 30 witnesses who heard nothing. After leaving the sorority house, Bundy broke into a basement apartment 8 blocks away and attacked Florida State University student Cheryl Thomas, dislocating her shoulder and fracturing her jaw and skull in 5 places. She was left with permanent deafness and equilibrium damage that ended her dance career. On Thomas's bed, police found a semen stain and a pantyhose mask containing 2 hairs, similar to Bundy's in class and characteristic.
15 minutes.
Yep.
Oh my god. How? 30 witnesses nearby.
Told ya.
It's a sorority house.
Yeah.
Hell.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I guess that, lucky to be alive, but at the 5 places having a fractured skull,
Yep. And
broken
only
jaw, dislocated shoulders, like.
Yep, of all those women, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all up. 3 survived. So he killed 2.
How did, okay,
yeah.
but the
Did
ones
he
that.
knock them unconscious? The other ones that survived? Because how did nobody get alerted?
Yeah, how would you not scream with having your shoulder dislocated? They must have been unconscious.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just reading this verbatim.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to look into it anymore because
Fair
that's
Yeah.
fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He must have done it out of some form of desperation or something.
That must have been a rage thing. Like,
Probably, yeah.
even if you're psychotic, and I don't see how anyone can get pleasure out of just beating the shit out of people.
Again, serial killer, mental imbalance, psychological issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. It's just, yeah. Ugh.
I love how we're trying to justify it. Like, oh, it must have been a rage thing. Like,
I mean,
nothing can justify acts
yeah,
like that.
it's entirely possible that there was no reason for it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They've just been like, well,
Yeah,
I'm
so
going down anyway.
pretty much. Yeah, so on February 8th, which would be about 3 weeks later, Bundy drove east to Jacksonville in a stolen university van. He approached 14-year-old Leslie Parmenter in a parking lot, and she was the daughter of the Jacksonville Police Department's chief of detectives. He identified himself as Richard Burton, Fire Department. but Parmienta's older brother arrived and challenged him, at which point he left. So,
Challenged him.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a fight.
And that afternoon, he backtracked west to Lake City. And at Lake City Junior High the following morning, 12-year-old Kimberly Diane Leach was summoned to her homeroom by a teacher to retrieve a forgotten purse. She never returned to class.
See, I mean, none of it is justifiable, but like the kids, man. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty rough. This next bit is pretty rough as well. Her partially mummified remains were found 7 weeks later in a pig farrowing shed near Suwannee River State Park, which is roughly 60 kilometres northwest of Lake City. She appeared to have been raped, with her underwear found near the body containing semen, and killed by violence to the neck with a knife. Yeah.
He's gone from like blunt objects to now.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just going to move on from that because I don't want to spend any more time on that than we have to. So, on February... God, we've been recording for a long time. My mouth is not working.
Yeah,
Well, look, we're getting towards the end, so we might as well just finish it.
yeah, exactly. There's just so much to cover on a person like this.
Yeah, probably could have done a two-parter, but we'll roll with it. So, on...
Somewhat two-parter.
Yeah, on February 12th, by this point, Bundy's running out of cash. His rent's overdue, and he's starting to panic. Thinking that the police are closing in on him. So he stole a car. God, yeah, it's terrible. Stole a car and drove away from Tallahassee. And 3 days later, around 1 in the morning, he was stopped by Pensacola police officer David Lee, pretty close to the Alabama state line. And a check of the registry showed that his Volkswagen Beetle was stolen. He's got a thing for Beetles. And when... Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess, again, he's got a type. Lee attempted to arrest him and got his legs kicked out from under him. And Bundy ran. Lee fired 2 rounds in Bundy's direction, chased him and tackled him. They struggled over the officer's gun before Bundy was finally subdued and arrested. In the car, the officer found 3 sets of IDs belonging to female Florida State students, 21 stolen credit cards, and a stolen television set. They also found clothes that were identified as the disguise worn by Richard Burton Fire Department when he tried to abduct Leslie Parmenter. Lee had no idea who he'd arrested. He had no idea that it was Bundy or who Bundy was.
Yeah.
Because you're on like the other side of the country.
Yeah. At this point, Bundy was on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list.
Damn.
So yeah, they were looking for him.
him.
I don't know. I could probably find out, but yeah, I don't. He was on the 10 most wanted list.
That many murders.
Yeah, and Lee later testified that as he was driving Bundy to jail, he heard Bundy say, "I wish you had killed me."
No.
Yeah. So, obviously, after this, the trial venue changed. They moved it to Miami, Florida, where Bundy stood trial for the Chi Omega murders and assaults. And this was in June of 1979. It was covered by 250 reporters from 5 continents. And it was the first criminal trial to be nationally televised in the United States.
Damn.
And that's part of the reason why Bundy has such a presence in the popular consciousness, because he was like the first really public figure to be tried for this kind of crime. And it's just people had never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And again, this was an international thing. And again, Bundy wanted to mount his own defence, handle his own
Did they let
stuff.
him this time?
Yep, he well
Yeah, I
the
reckon he still had the rights to, even though
Yeah.
yeah well the
against
the court did appoint him 5 attorneys, but he demanded to
Yeah.
handle the defence himself. One of the appointed attorneys, Polly Nelson, she wrote a book in 1994 called Defending the Devil, and in that she wrote that he sabotaged the entire defence effort out of spite, distrust, and grandiose delusion, and that Ted was facing murder charges with a possible death sentence, and all that mattered to him apparently was that he be in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
is-
he's kind of gone off the deep end at this point.
yeah,
At this point.
Yeah.
you think you could tell. Like,
Yeah.
And we can see it in if I can just call back to the previous episode when I was talking about organised and disorganised killers.
Yeah.
All right, there is now a dog in the studio. Hey, buddy, you right? Yeah. So.
Watch the cable. I think he's still
hey?
on the cable.
Oh, it's all right. Am I still still recording? Yep,
Awesome.
we're still getting audio. He's not damaged anything. Sorry, interrupted by dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we see with Bundy's progression, in his murder methods is that he's like started off as a textbook organized killer, and and towards the end has transformed into a disorganized killer, which is blah, 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 if I can gather my thoughts. Almost is fairly common.
Probably just out of desperation and things like that at that point as well. Like,
Yeah,
They just don't know what to do at that point because
Yeah.
there's too much against them. They can't-
yeah, he's definitely starting to lose it, and that would have
Yeah.
contributed
yeah.
to it.
'Cause
Yeah,
that's the thing. He's like, I want to be on the straight and path, but it's not like they're just going to be like, oh yeah, we'll just forget what you did.
yeah.
So he's kind of like, well, I've got no choice, but this is who I am now.
So during these trial proceedings, a pre-trial plea bargain was negotiated, in which Bundy would plead guilty to killing Levy, Bowman, and Leach in exchange for a firm 75-year prison sentence. The prosecutors were good with this because obviously they didn't really have enough evidence to charge him with much, so they were going to get whatever they wanted. Yeah, I mean they were going to take whatever they were given.
Given his age, like that's pretty much him done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Bundy reckoned that by taking the plea deal, he could avoid the death penalty, and if he took the plea and waited a few years, the evidence against him would probably fade away, and witnesses could die, evidence could become lost, witnesses could retract their testimony. And then he could file a post-conviction motion to set aside the plea and secure an acquittal. But he refused the deal at the last minute.
Interesting.
Mike Minerva, another member of the defence team, he was a Tallahassee public defender. He would later say that it made him realise he was going to have to stand up in front of the whole world and say he was guilty. He just couldn't do it. So, yeah,
But you are.
Bundy's got an ego on him.
Yeah.
Basically.
Very large one.
Yeah. So one of the crucial testimonies was from... just knocked the mic, sorry. Testimony was from Connie Hastings. She was a Chi Omega sorority member, and she had witnessed Bundy hanging around the sorority house the evening of the attacks. And Nita Neary, who was another sorority member, she saw him leaving the sorority house with the murder weapon, which you remember was a piece of oak firewood. And the evidence they submitted included impressions of bite wounds on Levy's left buttock, which were matched to castings of Bundy's teeth.
I was about to say, did they match the teeth?
Dental
Like,
Yeah.
records and whatnot.
Yeah, pretty much. The jury took less than 7 hours to convict him of the Bowman and Levy murders, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, for the assaults on Kleiner, Chandler, and Thomas, and 2 counts of burglary. And trial judge Edward Cowett imposed death sentences for the murder convictions. And a second trial took place in Orlando 6 months later for the abduction and murder of Kimberly Leach, where once again Bundy was found guilty after less than 8 hours of deliberation. Mostly due to an eyewitness who saw him leading Leach from the schoolyard to his stolen van.
Oh.
Yeah. There were also some clothing fibres that matched his jacket found on Leach's body, and some other things. That
So much evidence. And
yeah.
There are, what,
Well, you'd
4
think so.
convictions for murder now, or is it?
Oh boy.
Something along those lines.
Well, he's got the kidnapping charge against Duranche,
Yeah.
and murder charges against Bowman and Levy and Leach, and first-degree murder charges, or attempted first-degree murder charges on Kleiner, Chandler, and Thomas.
Right.
So he's got 1, 2, 3 death sentences, I believe.
Let's see.
Please tell me that's enough evidence now.
It is, weirdly enough.
Well,
I would believe, at least.
he was on. Let me see. In 1980, he was sentenced for a 3rd time to death by electrocution.
Yeah.
So the judge only imposed death sentences on the murders of Bowman and Levy, not Leach, I don't think. But yeah, so he's got a 3rd time.
How is he not dead yet?
Well, you'll see. But before that, quick aside, there is an obscure Florida law that if a marriage declaration is made in court in the presence of a judge, it constitutes a legal marriage in the state of Florida. Bundy took advantage of this during one of his trials when he was questioning Carol Boone, who was on the witness stand,
Didn't he?
and he asked her to marry him.
Yeah.
She accepted, and Bundy declared to the court that they were legally married. Which they were, according to Florida state law.
Yeah.
Florida.
Why did he do that, though? What is the point?
I don't. I guess he just wanted the publicity. I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Again, I encourage anyone
how
to
you're
go
like-
and do their own research on this stuff.
Yeah, I like
Really.
how you're like, but why'd he do that? Why'd she accept?
That is a good point.
She was with him. She was with him until the end,
Yeah.
basically. Yep. So he's basically he's got three death sentences on his head. He's in prison, and this is the point at which he starts giving interviews. He does a series of interviews with Stephen Michaud and Hugh Ainsworth, and this is where he's, finally, for the first time, talking about, what he did, all his crimes. You remember Klipfer had suspected that he'd stolen everything of value that he owned? Yeah, he confirmed that. And it was that kind of ties into what he says that his motives were, mainly possession. Bundy was a power control killer. If you remember back to our first episode, we were talking about the types of serial killers.
Yeah.
He wanted to feel powerful and in control over his victims. A lot of that came through the sexual assault side, and early on, he just saw murder as a byproduct, as a way of getting rid of the witness. But that later became part of it, part of the adventure, as he put it. Yeah, he implied that he had started killing well before 1974, which was when his first murder, Linda Healy, happened.
Yeah.
And described himself as an amateur and impulsive killer, and that his phase of murders between 74 and 78, which was basically everything that we covered, aside from the Florida stuff, including the Florida stuff, was where he became a prime or predator killer. Yeah, He never
Quite the way to word it.
Yeah, he never explicitly admitted to any murders before 1974, but he heavily implied it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Anne Rule, his DES co-worker, who later was fairly involved in the investigation, she pretty much believed wholeheartedly that he had begun killing earlier.
Right.
Yeah. So in 1986, an execution date was set on the Chi Omega convictions, but the Supreme Court announced a stay of execution. It was rescheduled several times, mostly for evidence to be re-reviewed by the court systems. And in this time, he basically confessed everything. Yep, he included details of what he did to some of his victims after death, that he would often revisit Taylor Mountain, Issaquah, all the other dump sites, and basically did stuff with the bodies until putrefaction forced him to stop.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Oh my god.
He...
So he visited them like several times and nobody like saw the tracks or.
Yeah, pretty much. Because it's like he's probably dumping them in areas that people aren't frequenting, you know, to lessen the risk of being caught. But yeah, he with Melissa Smith, he at least once applied makeup to her face, and several times would wash Laura Ames' hair with shampoo. And this was after they were dead.
Eesh.
Yeah.
Oh.
He... Around 12 of his victims were decapitated, and he kept several of the heads in his apartment for
In his apartment.
several days, yeah. Again, until putrefaction forced him to get rid of them.
God.
Yeah. So,
So now
Not
he's
great.
just confessing all this stuff because he knows he's done it, and he's like, he may as well get the attention for it.
yeah, pretty much. So, a final execution date was set for January 24th, 1989. Unusually rapid for the court system at the time, because obviously they're wanting to speed this guy through, you know, just get it over with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he basically kept confessing, confessed that he had committed all 8 Pacific Northwest murders, described 3 additional previously unknown victims in Washington and 2 in Oregon, who he did not identify.
Damn.
He described the Issaquah crime scene, where they later found the bones of Otten, Asland, and Hawkins, and confessed that he had committed numerous additional murders in Idaho, Utah, and Colorado, including several that were unknown to the police. He withheld a lot of details, which they pretty quickly realised as a ploy to get another stay of execution. You know, kind of drag it out because they wanted the details. But his unwillingness to give up those details basically meant that they wanted him in the chair faster. They just wanted to see him gone. And finally, Theodore Bundy died in the Rayford electric chair at 7:16 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 24th, 1989. And while this was happening, there was a crowd of hundreds of people in a field across from the prison, like celebrating. They were setting off fireworks. They were cheering. They were cheering as the hearse left the prison. So it was quite a thing. So remember, this was a huge public event.
Yeah.
This was, and he was cremated in Gainesville, and his ashes were scattered at an undisclosed location in the Cascade Range of Washington State, in accordance with his will. And that,
Who has rights to a will at that point?
You
America.
still got to respect people's wishes.
Yeah.
And that is the story of Ted Bundy.
That wasn't very pleasant.
No,
Weirdly enough.
no, could have told you
Speaking
that.
of, like life stories.
I feel like
that's-
I've sat through a movie or something.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. It's
Well,
the
I mean,
length of a movie.
We're
almost.
we're coming up on 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
because like obviously our first part was just about serial killers and things like that, but like going through this. I mean, to be fair, we've gone through someone's entire life in 2 hours.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
How old was he when he died? Like 34 or something?
89.
Oh, he was born
Bundy-
in 49, wasn't
He was born in 1946.
he? Oh, 46.
He was 42.
Damn.
Yeah.
Right.
He was
To be
doing
fair, he probably should have only lived to like 30.
Yeah, he was doing most of his murders in his 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was able to live that long.
Yeah. Yeah, so he basically started on his first set of murders out of college, and then the second set
Well, that we know
down
of.
and that was all within the span of 4 years, and then he was arrested and escaped, committed his next set of murders in Florida, and then was convicted and executed.
Finally. He was finally
Yeah.
executed and left this
About
earth.
bloody
There
time.
was so much like circumstantial evidence
Mm.
and
But, like-
some evidence, witnesses, and like actual like body evidence to him and victims, which
How long is it like circumstantial? Because if you like each individual bit of evidence, sure, but once there's that much evidence, I feel like you should just detain them. Like even if you just like keep I know you can't keep someone without like actual like rights, but after that much evidence, just keep them out of the public until you like actually figure
It's
it
all
out.
it's all just legal hoopla. I mean, the most they can do is keep him under surveillance, really, which they did. Yeah.
Yeah, but he still killed how many people under surveillance?
I don't think he killed anyone
Well,
while they were under surveillance.
The people at like in the sorority.
Well, that was after he escaped.
yeah, so he
True,
Yeah.
went to the
Like, he
trial
literally-
and then escaped.
Yeah, he literally went
Yeah.
to a different state and was able to just be like, imagine if he could like
Mm.
leave the country at that point, like
Yeah.
with enough money to like go to England or whatever.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have found him.
Yeah.
He was probably just so egotistical. He's like, nah, I can keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can.
And
I can do this.
the cop who pulled him over in Florida had no idea who he was.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
Like he
it's
just arrested him on a charge of a stolen car.
It's like
Yeah.
the complete opposite state, so it's not surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, each state is almost like a different country with like how they do things and.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah. It's pretty. Yeah, it can get pretty granular with state law, and all
Yeah.
that, which I guess contributed to the difficulty in convicting him.
But then he was chased by the FBI, and the FBI can pretty much ignore like.
Yes,
for
yes,
the
yeah,
most
yeah.
part.
Federal police, yeah, they operate under federal law, not state law.
Yes,
So
they don't have to pay attention.
federal law being the legal statute that covers the entire United States. It's all
Yeah.
common laws. State law being the laws that apply in each state, and obviously
So
they're
like other
different.
countries' police.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Mm.
You know, not
So
gonna
making
lie.
it super complicated.
Yeah.
Oh.
Not gonna lie, I don't feel bad for not doing any research anymore.
I,
Like,
I just can't believe that I got 3 hours out of all that. Well, nearly three. A good 2.5
pretty
hours.
pretty
Just
much
over.
3 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
That was. Oh.
You could have dragged it out, honestly. Like it would have been super.
Yeah.
Because you started just whipping through those murders like midway. And
Yeah, well, I had to.
Yeah.
I had to. I was like, when I was doing the research, I realized there's too much here. I cannot dwell on this. I need to just get
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially because we are going to be talking about like each points, like because
Hmm.
even if you had read everything and we just didn't contribute, that's still like
Yeah.
like 2 hours worth of content anyway.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So that's that.
The life of Ted Bundy.
Thank you for coming to my TED talk.
You
Oh,
did
yeah,
not
man.
just.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Bro, they're our competition now. TED Talks are our competition podcast now. Like
Oh, God.
one day we will be as good as.
oh, I wish.
Oh man.
Yeah.
same.
So yeah, that was well, I would say it was a genuine pleasure being on the show, but after going through some of that subject matter,
Yeah.
woof.
I mean,
Yeah, maybe something else next time, eh?
yeah. I mean, I wanted to do the whole Madeline McCain thing next week, but maybe we'll go into something a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it'll probably still be along the lines of like.
Maybe some like idiotic conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Next time.
Oh, I
You
would
know what?
love to
Yeah,
do that.
That's what we'll do next week. We'll do some like still conspiracy theories and that like along that sort of vein, but we'll do some like funny ones. Like world's dumbest criminals and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll do something a little bit more lighthearted, but still in the same category for next week.
That would be ideal. Like, I feel mentally drained after that.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah,
going
you're
on.
telling me.
So much information in my head, and it's all just fucked.
Yeah.
Do
Oh,
you
man.
think it's bad for you? This has been basically my entire weekend
Yeah.
researching this.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, jeez. Well, Lee,
Yeah.
it has been lovely having you on this episode. I'm
been a
pretty
pleasure.
sure we'll probably have you on most episodes, if not
Highly
every
likely.
episode. going
I
forward.
am not complaining about that. I will come back anytime.
Yeah. Oh, man. But anyway, that's all for this episode. Make sure to check out the other episodes on our channel, ZeroFunction Podcast. We're also on Spotify. A little bit dodgy at the moment, but we've got an episode on Spotify.
Upload speed will be very slow, probably.
Yeah,
Yep.
once we actually get everything figured and the ball starts rolling, hopefully everything will, just as time goes on, we increase in quality, so it'll be sweet.
Rate and subscribe.
Yeah, like, subscribe, comment down below. If you have any sort of things that you want us to go over specifically, just comment down below on any of our videos, and we'll probably see it, and we can talk about it in a future episode. Anyway,
Very cool.
goodbye for now.
Bye.
See ya.